Got the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark and Lexi Hull. Are we doing injuries? Are we doing the Indiana Fever Hospital MASH unit all over again? Is that what we're doing? We got Caitlin Clark making a little comment about her leg sleeve. Like, why are you having to wear that? Question mark. Let me guess. Back brace, just precaution.
The league thought
They had a gold mine until the crowd stopped showing up. Suddenly, the same Caitlin Clark they couldn't stop talking about became the one they couldn't afford to ignore. Ticket sales dipped, panic crept in, and now the Indiana Fever are scrambling to fix a problem they may have created themselves. But what really went wrong behind the scenes? Who made the call that changed everything? And why does it feel like this story is just getting started?
So it is game one for the Indiana Fever, and I'm not gonna lie, they are trolling us a little bit by putting Damiris Dantas here. It's a little bit of trolling, we have to admit, by putting Damiris Dantas on the cover photo for this. That is, I will consider that trolling. Harmless trolling, sure, absolutely trolling, because Damiris Dantas is someone that probably should not be on this team, especially when there are significantly better players that have just been waived. But
before we move
on, smash that like button and subscribe, because you know you don't want to miss out on this one. It turns out the quickest way to drain the energy out of a packed arena is to treat your main attraction like just another name on the roster. Not long ago, tickets were disappearing in seconds thanks to Caitlin Clark, and the buzz felt unstoppable.
There's still so much going on in this preseason. Teams are starting to cut certain players. They're starting to finalize their roster. You're starting to get a better idea of just what the DNA and the makeup of these different teams are going to be. The preseason games are pretty much over, and maybe we'll start there in today's episode. Let's talk a little bit about the Indiana Fever's last preseason game against the Nigerian national team. So I didn't go live for this game, and I didn't go live for this game because I knew that it wasn't going to be a competitive.
Then, almost inexplicably, the same franchise that thrived off her spotlight started moving like that spotlight was no longer essential, and everything began to shift. Then, almost overnight, the tone shifted. The messaging got strange, and the results started telling a story nobody in that building wanted to admit out loud.
There's a video going around because, you know, you got local TV stations, etc., editing together footage to talk about the season about to start. And there was a video out there, and part of it, I guess Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White hugged each other. Guys, that means nothing. Do not let people blow smoke up your ass. That makes them best. Guys, Caitlin Clark is unbelievably classy.
Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Fans did not suddenly forget how to love basketball, and they did not suddenly lose interest in the Indiana Fever. What they did lose interest in was confusion, inconsistency, and a front-facing narrative that simply did not match what they were watching unfold on the court.
fans can't afford to go to Old Trafford anymore. They do everything they can to cancel people's season tickets, and with a long season ticket waiting list, they make sure that anyone does anything wrong, they'll cancel their season tickets. So basically, tourists will pay more for the games than locals. It's not the Manchester's. I know Manchester would be a fairly wealthy enough area, but as a Leeds United fan, that's what everyone fears. With the way prices are going up and tourist fans and Leeds make it.
When a franchise builds momentum around a generational player, the expectation is simple, which is that everything revolves around maximizing that player's impact. Instead, what people began to notice was hesitation, questionable decision-making, and a growing gap between what was being said publicly and what was actually happening in games. And that is where the controversy around Stephanie White begins to take shape, because her press conferences started sounding less like confident leadership and more like carefully packaged explanations that did not quite hold up under scrutiny. She spoke about injuries as if they were random, uncontrollable events, as though the team was simply unlucky, caught in a storm they could not predict. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. They wanted to know whether these situations were truly unavoidable or whether decisions were being made that increased the risk in the first place. When a player of Clark's magnitude is involved, every minute on the court is scrutinized, and every substitution becomes a debate waiting to happen. The frustration did not come from a single incident, because it rarely does. It came from repetition. It came from moments that felt unnecessary, like playing a key star late in games that were already under control or rushing returns that did not feel fully justified. Each moment on its own might be defensible, but together they started forming a pattern that fans could not ignore.
And we will look at tickets for the season opener. Guys, do you understand that 2 years ago, 2024, and even in the beginning of 2025, I was doing videos making fun of other franchises because they could not sell out their games. In fact, they couldn't even come close to selling out their games, right?
That pattern led to a very uncomfortable question, which is whether the Fever were truly prioritizing long-term success or reacting to short-term pressures like ticket sales, media attention, and maintaining hype. And this is where the irony becomes impossible to ignore. The same organization that appeared to underplay Clark's central role suddenly found itself needing the exact thing it seemed willing to risk, which was her consistent presence and peak performance. Ticket demand is not just about basketball, it is about belief, excitement, and the feeling that something special could happen. That sounds like a modern data-driven approach. However, fans are not just looking at spreadsheets, they are watching games. They are seeing when players look fatigued, when injuries linger, and when decisions feel out of sync with what is happening in real time. That disconnect is where narratives start to shift, because once people stop trusting the explanation, they start creating their own. Suddenly, every decision becomes suspicious. Every comment gets dissected, and every loss feels like confirmation of something deeper going wrong. It is not just about wins and losses anymore. It is about credibility.
For me, as a fan watching this game, I didn't really hold much weight in this game, okay? The Fever won by 50 points. Every single player played well. And I think it would have been concerning if every single player didn't play well. But there are a few takeaways that I have from this game. The first one being Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston is back into the mix. It seems like she has recovered from whatever injury she sustained in Unrivaled. That was a very good sign that she was able to play in this preseason game.
Then comes the conversation about mentality. And this is where things escalate even further. White has spoken about positioning the team for a championship, which on the surface sounds like ambition. However, in the world of professional sports, wording matters more than people realize. There is a subtle but significant difference between aiming to position yourself for success and declaring that success is the only acceptable outcome. Fans, especially in a market energized by a player like Clark, it becomes incredibly difficult to shift the narrative back. At the same time, roster changes and team chemistry add another layer to the situation. White has emphasized experience, the importance of going through ups and downs, and learning from past seasons. However, when key pieces change and continuity is disrupted, those lessons do not always carry over in the way you would expect. It creates a strange contradiction, where the team is both experienced and inexperienced at the same time, trying to build something new while referencing something that no longer fully exists.
Stephanie White is a loser and a liar. She has a losing mentality, and she just constantly lies every time she's in front of a microphone. Lie, 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 lie. Stephanie White lies is what we're going to start calling her. Stephanie White Lies gave an interview yesterday, press conference, media availability, where she did two of her favorite things.
And then there is the human element, which White often highlights as a core part of her philosophy. She talks about relationships, about shared experiences, and about creating an environment where players feel supported beyond just the scoreboard. That approach is valuable, and it resonates with players on a personal level. However, in professional sports, especially at the highest level, there is always a tension between culture and results. This is where the ticket sales narrative circles back in a way that feels almost poetic. The Fever did not just benefit from Clark's arrival, they experienced a surge that redefined expectations for the entire organization. Arenas filled up, media coverage expanded, every quote and every substitution. Or is this simply the messy reality of building a contender in real time, where mistakes are inevitable and narratives can spiral faster than anyone can control? Because here is the truth that nobody can comfortably admit. The situation is not beyond repair, but it is far more fragile than it appears. Clark is still the centerpiece, the draw, and the reason people care as much as they do. The team still has the potential to turn things around, to align its messaging with its actions, and to rebuild the trust that feels slightly shaken right now. However, potential does not sell tickets by itself. Execution does, consistency does, and above all, belief does.
Start with tickets. That we would be sitting here talking about the Indiana Fever, and we are a few days out, folks. What are we, 5 days out? They play on Saturday. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, we're 5.5 days away. It is unimaginable. I looked at this. I saw this little, good God, the social media of the Indiana
Favorite train wreck now. So the real story is not just about ticket sales or press conferences or even coaching decisions. It is about whether the Indiana Fever can recognize the moment they are in and respond accordingly before that moment slips away. Because in sports, timing is everything, and windows close much faster than people expect. And if this situation continues the way it has been trending, one uncomfortable thought starts creeping in, which is whether the problem was ever the fans losing interest or if it was the organization misreading. And if they do not figure that out soon, the silence in those seats might start saying more than any press conference ever could. And silence in sports is never just silence. It is judgment, it is frustration, and sometimes it is the sound of fans quietly deciding that their time and money are better spent somewhere else. That is the part organizations never say out loud, because it sounds dramatic, but it is very real. When the buzz fades, it rarely disappears all at once. It fades in layers, starting with hesitation, then skepticism, and eventually turning into indifference, which is the one thing no franchise can afford.
And showed off her loser mentality. Stephanie White's not obsessed with this. She's not obsessed with this. While other coaches are busy scouting and watching film, Stephanie White's busy going on vacations and going and broadcasting on ESPN, doing play-by-play commentary. She's not obsessed with this. While other teams, coaches are game planning and strategizing, Stephanie White is on vacations and at ESPN doing play-by-play commentary. She's not built for this.
For the Indiana Fever, the stakes feel even higher because of what they already experienced. This is not a team trying to build attention from scratch. This is a team that already had the spotlight handed to them on a silver platter, wrapped in the arrival of Caitlin Clark. That kind of momentum is supposed to buy you time, but it also raises expectations to a level where every misstep feels amplified. And right now, those missteps are not being hidden very well, because when fans start connecting dots, even loosely, the narrative begins to write itself. They see a player who draws national attention, who changes the energy of every arena she steps into, and then they see decisions that do not fully maximize that impact, whether it is minutes management, lineup rotations, or late-game choices that feel unnecessary. It all adds up in the minds of people watching closely. Then comes the messaging, which somehow makes everything even more complicated. When Stephanie White steps in front of a microphone and leans on phrases about uncontrollable circumstances, about randomness, about things simply being part of the game, it creates a gap between accountability and explanation. That gap is where frustration grows, because fans are not asking for perfection. They are asking for clarity, for honesty, and for decisions that align with what they are seeing in real time.
Tickets were sold out for their home opener by April 15th. Yes, you heard that correctly, April 15th. And they were, I believe, much higher than they are right now, but they are not sold out yet. So we've got a little promo here that's about a minute long that we're going to check out, because there's something else we got to talk about. And I'm curious if y'all pick up on that as well.
Fever fans, welcome back to Gamebridge. We're super excited to have you guys here. We're going to be working hard. We're going to have a lot of fun.
And here is where the tension quietly turns into something bigger. Because once a fan base starts questioning leadership, it does not stop at one issue. It spreads. It moves from injuries to strategy, from strategy to mentality, and from mentality to culture. Suddenly, everything becomes part of the same conversation, and every answer feels like it is being measured against a standard that keeps getting higher. The irony, once again, is impossible to ignore. The Fever are not lacking talent, and they are not lacking attention. What they are struggling with, at least from the outside looking in, is alignment. And in a league where the best teams speak with certainty, that difference becomes glaring. It is not just middle ground is where narratives get messy. And while all of this is unfolding, the pressure on Clark continues to grow in a way that feels both inevitable and unfair. She is expected to deliver, to carry, to elevate, and to entertain all at the same time. That is the burden of being a generational player, and it comes with very little patience from the outside world.
The WNBA GM survey has dropped, which is a survey where they ask all of these WNBA GMs questions like best players, best coaches, best offseason moves, and y'all, just get ready for a bit of a rant.
From the logo.
Well, the GM survey has dropped, and I'm just gonna say it straight out. The disrespect is just glaring.
But here is the twist that nobody likes to admit. Even generational players need structure. They need consistency, they need smart management, and they need an environment that amplifies their strengths instead of complicating them. When that environment feels unstable, even slightly, it shows up in subtle ways. It shows up in rhythm, in confidence, and sometimes in health. And that brings everything full circle back to the decisions being made behind the scenes. Because if the Fever truly want to stabilize both performance and perception, they have to address the root of the issue. The organization is stuck in a loop, where every attempt to reassure fans ends up creating more questions. And the longer that loop continues, the harder it becomes to break out of it. Because at some point, people stop waiting for things to make sense, and they start assuming that maybe they already do. So the question now becomes sharper, more urgent, and harder to avoid. Will the Indiana Fever recognize what is slipping through their fingers before it is too late? Or will they continue to operate as if everything is under control while the outside world slowly loses confidence? And more importantly, how long can they afford to find out the answer the hard way?